Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, October 11th SIG Release weekly meeting. It's amazing that it's October 11th already. Like, where did the time go? It's crazy. It's wild. Sorry, I just totally sidetracked myself. Welcome to the October 11th SIG Release meeting. This meeting is covered by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, which essentially boils down to be excellent to one another. The notes for this meeting are going to be dropped into the chat right here. And with that, we can go ahead and kick things off. If you have anything you would like to add to the agenda, feel free to do so now. Please also add yourself as an attendee so we know we have a record of who's been here. And if anybody is new, we'll give them the opportunity right now to go ahead and introduce themselves. All right. Anybody want to say hello? No? Okay, we'll move on then. We'll move on to sub-project updates, and we'll start with release engineering. Does anybody, Marco, want to give a release engineering update?
Yes, so I can go quickly.
So
the first topic that I would like to say for today is that, as far as I know, the migration from GCR to artificial registry has been completed. And I would like to take this opportunity to thanks a lot to Mahmoud Ali. I hope I didn't mispronounce the name, but thank you a lot for taking care of this and for creating all the PRs and taking care of everything. Other than that, I think that no many major updates. We are preparing for another set of patch releases scheduled for tomorrow. We will be cutting 125, 124, and 123 releases. As far as I know, we might have alpha for 126 coming out today, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And we also are discussing about the Golang update that's supposed to go out today, but this is still that is ongoing on Slack.
The 126 alpha cut has started. We kicked off the stage about an hour ago or so it's probably ready to move on. We'll sync back with CC. She's kind of driving that today. Hopefully everything goes well. I think this will be the first Kubernetes release we've done with the new image promoter changes. So we'll report back on if there's anything interesting there. Anything else on the relation engineering side? Hey, Adolfo, welcome.
From my side, I think that's it from now.
All right. Any questions around release engineering? I actually had a question, I guess. The package publishing stuff seems like it's got a little bit of urgency due to the folks on the Google side dwindling down. Do we have any updates or any blockers that we can help with around package publishing?
We have started some discussions with Jason and Ray about setting up some project that we can use for testing. Sasha also updated CAP for publishing packages today. So I think it is moving, and we are going to see about how we can get started on this to try to come up with some proof of concept that we can use and that see how it all works. I'm not sure, is there anyone else who can add anything to this?
I have a question. So what's the problem on Google side? Why the urgency?
Well, I think that there's less availability from the folks based off of Ben's most recent comments.
Okay.
He specifically suggested that maybe we should just start building the packages ourselves, and then Google folks could still sign them and publish them. but like start to make progress on that, because I think there's I think that team has less bandwidth based off of his comments, and I think that there's not going to be much more bandwidth for them in the future.
Yeah, so just to, well, my current understanding, and correct me, Jason, and the other folks working on that, is that, well, the initial proposal was that we were going to be building the packages inside of our build process and then just set them up for them to sign. But now the obvious stuff is going to take care of everything, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding. I think it is going to work in a similar way that we have right now, so that we do build process in Google Cloud Build and all that, push that to buckets, and then OBS is going to double that packages to put them, create devs and RPMs, and push everything to the repositories where needed. That's my understanding. I'm not sure is this 100% correctly, but yeah.
Yeah, so the idea was we take the pre-signed, pre-built binaries that we're building through the release process today and basically just build an RPM using those pre-built binaries, and that RPM will be signed by OBS. But that's just for the OBS POC that we were doing. I know we had discussed potentially doing a POC with similar architecture to what the Google folks are currently doing today, but in cloud build. I don't know if anybody's done any work with that yet or not.
Oh, no, well, okay. So I feel that that plan was kind of set aside and no one is actually working on that, or unless I'm wrong. Yeah, it was kind of set aside in favor of the OBS POC.
Okay. Yeah, the biggest blocker we have on the, well, the biggest blocker we have had on the OBS POC was just delegating access to folks to the POC sub-project that was created under the OBS project for Kubernetes. Because when that was created with limited admins. I know Stephen was one of the admins for that. I don't know if anybody else was also created as an admin for that. So we haven't had access to that sub-project for the POC yet. And we're going ahead on basically creating it underneath, you know, a personal project for now. And then when we get the access permissions fixed up for the POC sub-project, we can start getting everything moved on over there. But Marco's going to go ahead and start running with it in a personal project so that we're not taking any longer just waiting for access.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, cool. I think that's still an area that we should like, I think that's going to be the near term focus for us, or should be one of the near term focuses for us to get off of the dependency on the Google team. All right. Any other comments or questions about that? All right, cool. Let's move on to release team sub-project updates. Leo, do you want to walk us through that?
Hello. Sure, yes. So we're looking good, I would say. We are collecting major themes and deprecations right now. So this is in progress. We have quite a few, but nothing really, like from deprecation side of things, nothing really release defining. So these are like small deprecations, but we will still bundle both things in the blog. So we figured it's, even if there's like just a few deprecations, maybe it's still kind of useful to share this information. So we basically combine both in one blog. Right, then I sent out a doodle to just collect the meeting for the APAC friendly meeting, which starts end of next week. The release team meetings during KubeCon will be cancelled, and we will have in Slack updates. I think we also did this in the past. And then we received 4 exception requests. 3 of them have been approved. The second one is also looking right now that we also approve it. So this is also looking good. Yeah, that's it. Everything is looking good. Check this for the okay. Yeah. I will have a look.
Yeah,
Thanks,
two
Ray.
APIs that's marked to be removed in 126. Some beta APIs we should note in the blog as well. So there's 2 listed there.
All right. I will see if this is already tracked on our side or not, but thank you. Great. Any questions?
All right. Sounds like we are pretty good on that topic. So we can move on to open discussion items now. And the first one on the list was added by Ray, but I think it's from the Slack thread that James had going. James, you said you weren't going to be here because you're sick.
I am sick, as you will
Oh.
hear, but I have dragged myself to this meeting as the one piece of soul work I do today. All right, so the background to this is KEP 3344, which is effectively a process KEP to change how the release team is built. It doesn't change the jobs or role or anything of an active release team, but just changes how, or would change how it would be assembled. The motivation for this, it was largely kind of an observation from my time on the release team and from others that the experience for new contributors is very well laid out in the form of the shadow survey. And the experience for leads is pretty well laid out because you get chosen ahead of time and then you kind of get time to onboard and stuff. But the experience for returning contributors who are not like role leads or release lead shadows or release lead in the next release is not great because you end up having to go through the same pathway as everyone else, which means that we had a lot of cases when we looked into it where people shadowed for like a role or a release or 2 maybe, but then either were not chosen or had some life interruption, which meant that they couldn't be on another release, and then just kind of fell off the process more or less and found it very difficult to get back on. So the motivation here was to build a process that was a bit more friendly to having a more consistent cast of people in these release teams and make it easier for people to take breaks either for personal reasons or just because it's very exhausting doing release team work. So yeah, so this proposal was written and it largely proposes a roster, a stable roster, where the idea is that after shadowing for a release or 2, you would end up on this stable roster, and then the release team would be built from the stable roster and the existing shadow application, which is in practice what we do now. I say what we do now, it's what we did back when I was selecting people for release teams back before 124. I'm not sure if it's different now, but effectively we'd always look to build a sub team of like 4 or 5 people, and we go, okay, we want 2 or 3 kind of new people, and then the rest people who've done it before. So it's effectively what we already do. This has been out for comment for a little while. Stephen commented on it recently. I said he was putting -1 on having a stable roster, quoting concerns with staffing, though I'm not entirely sure what he meant. So yeah, I just wanted to discuss it to see where we were with it and, you know, how people felt about it and kind of just go from there. That's the background, I think.
I think Stephen's comments are generally around the fact that the release team can be pretty intensive. And if we take people onto a stable roster and expect them to hang around the release for multiple releases at a time, that's probably a good recipe for burnout and may likely not address the issue, the underlying issue. Stephen's not here, so I don't want to speak for him. I'm trying to summarize some comments. Go for it, Veronica.
I have heard a similar thing directly from Stephen. I hope. we are authorized to say this. I mean, it's a simple thing. He said something along those lines, but also because he wanted to empower people to be able to say like, hey, I don't have the time or the bandwidth to contribute right now, but that doesn't mean that I won't have the bandwidth like in the near future, and like, which has been the case with actually many of us. So he wouldn't like that to be a deterrent for people to be like, oh, sorry, I cannot, like probably in the last trimester of the year, I won't be able to join. So then that would make people not join at all. That's what he told me. And also like, yeah, and in basic terms, he wants to empower people also for the opposite, like including existing people who don't want to be part of the team anymore, to be able to personally say like, hey, speak up and say, hey, I don't have the time, or I don't want to do this anymore. But I think it has to do with his leadership style, to let people decide what to do. So I think that would be why he would vote -1.
I see a comment from Sasha that says if the release leads are -1 on the stable roster, then we could refocus the cap to, and it looks like he suggested focusing on providing an on-ramp for new community members, which I think we have and could continue to do. Provide a more streamlined process for release team shadows, including an easier return to future release teams, and then a better handling of contributors who wish to take a break from the team and then return, specifically like that return on ramp. Ray, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to share my experience because I've been in that role where I've had to go look for role leads from previous release teams, and all that was, it was just going back on the release team rosters to ping folks. It wasn't bad, but I could see Steven's points is that sometimes we do have trouble staffing, and it's not staffing new shadows on the team. It's from what I'm this is on assumption. I'm assuming that that Steven meant the role leads that we've had in the past before, and yeah. So I've also seen as well where folks who have been on release teams are not picked on the next release teams as well, but I also feel that we have so many applicants. We have 180 plus applicants, sometimes 140 or 180 or more, and it's hard to selecting a release team is one of the hardest things, and as role lead or as a lead as well. So I'm fairly neutral on this. I don't know. I could see the benefit of it, but as was mentioned as well, I don't want it to lead to burnout. I also don't want it to reduce our openness for new contributors as well. If we do go about with having a stable release team roster, we should be clear that we're open for new contributors, and that still remains. So that's my biggest concern, is that we are reducing our openness for new contributors. Okay, that's it.
James, go ahead.
So it's really interesting to hear this feedback, because a lot of these things that we're talking about, so the desire for people to be able to take breaks and say that they can come back, at some time in the future, third or fourth quarter, that kind of thing, the ability for people to not feel pressured to be on every release, the ability to communicate that we do have open positions, were all things that I sought to achieve through doing this. Like the whole point of this was that, if you did end up in this hypothetical roster, then you could take breaks, and that was okay. That you could say, I'm on roster, I can come back more or less whenever I want to, but I don't have to. The idea was it would be codified that, we take, for each sub team, we take roughly half and half new people, experienced people, which is what we do anyway. It was my intent that all these things would be written down and codified. So it's really interesting that that's the concern, because that says to me that either the belief is that this roster will not work for those reasons, or have I failed to kind of communicate or articulate how this is what I was trying to achieve? I'm not sure. That's it. Sorry, yeah. I mean, do people feel that, like, certainly with Stephen's comments, a stable roster just isn't feasible, and we should instead focus on like Sasha's comments? Like, I could reframe his cap to just be, you know, let's focus purely on making the on ramp for, sorry, the, I guess, continued ramp, as we were putting it, the continued path for returning shadows to be better. That could just be what I focus on, and we ignore the roster. I mean, to be blunt, I think that it'll end up as a roster in all but name, but maybe that's fine.
Yeah, and maybe like the term roster and the assumption that people will be actively doing things is not the approach. Maybe it is truly that narrowing or refining the processes, documentation, really. Like, I don't think it's really processing. I think it's documentation that you can, like, clarifying that you may not get picked for the next release team, or you may step away, but there are always opportunities to come back, and identifying like the situations where we would need to go back and go to the well to say, hey, can you come back? And I think most people, if their situation hasn't drastically changed, are probably willing to come back and help. Like, if you're in a completely different job now and you're not doing Kubernetes anymore and you don't get any support to do upstream stuff, that's probably a situation where you're not going to be willing to come back and help. But if you're in a similar space and there is a need for people to come back and like lead comms again or enhancements, then I think that the roster is really like the former people who have done the job. Could be shadows, could be the leads, and I don't, like, maybe we just don't need to define a stable roster of folks that are just sitting around waiting for things to happen, or continually. I think, like, the worry is that stable roster is continually working on the release team. So you were like always doing enhancements. You've done enhancements for 3 times in a row, or you've done bug triage for 3 times in a row, or you're the branch manager, like cutting the releases for 3 times in a row. Like, it takes effort to do a lot of these things. If we make the stable, like, I don't know, maybe I'm rambling a little too much. Maybe focusing on the comments from Sasha is a good first step, and we can figure out what that evolves into. Veronica, you have your hand up, go ahead.
But isn't it what happens right now? I think that even though we don't have like a stable roster, and I say this humbly, I think that the same people end up doing the same tasks for the better, you know? So I don't know how much this can be changed based on how volunteer-based this is, and how some roles need some degree of trust, and that you only earn through the time or by people knowing each other's work and things like that, you know? So I don't know. I personally would have voted like a few months ago for a more stable and controlled environment. But I also, after talking like to a couple of you, including Stephen, and their views, sorry, I think it would work, in my opinion, with less structure on paper and just knowing the team and knowing who to call for different stuff. Obviously, I think it also depends a lot on people's personalities, and there are people who are very good at saying like, right now I cannot do this, or I don't want to do this, and people who are not that good at that. So I don't know how can we codify that, because we're not getting paid for this. So I don't know.
It doesn't sound like we're going to come to a firm.
Well,
oh, go ahead, James.
It sounds like from certainly from the people here and from people I've been talking to, people are either ambivalent or -1. which is probably a good indication that this is not, there's not enough support to go forward with this as it is. Right? Because like no one is saying, yeah, this is a great idea. Let's do it. I really think this is amazing. Everyone's kind of saying, yeah, it could work, or no.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to take that as a signal that this needs to change. Do we think there's still value in like the core thing I want to, like, do people agree with me that the experience for returning contributors is not good enough at the moment and could be improved? Is that a problem that people think is worth solving and requires change?
Yes.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
agree.
Okay. So if I reframe to focus purely on solving that problem, maybe that's the way of doing it. I know what it looks like. I mean, the obvious answer would be to have, you know, in many ways, I think we already do this, don't we? Have two surveys, one for returning, one for new people. Do we still have that? I know that was brought in at some point.
Yeah, we still do that. We have that option on the application.
Yeah, maybe it's just beefing up documentation and building out that kind of second way in, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, a few cycles ago, I did add in some suggestions in the handbooks, like for some roles, like it would be good to have at least one release team veteran.
Yeah.
Something of that sort on for the role. Or it was either one or two. I remember that came from one of the retros, and we could work off that and make it into just in the handbook. It's not. It's. I'm sure most people don't know it's there, but yeah, we could work on that, and that leads to Sasha's comments as well. That leads to like helping solve this issue that most of us here have agreed is just the folks to without returning to make that process easier.
It's 2 returning newcomer per team. Yeah, that's what we've done for a long time. I think pretty informally. I'm not sure if I assume it's formalized now, but
yeah,
soft requirement. Yeah,
suggestion. Yeah, but we could have it a way. I don't know how we can to make this more formalized or better documentation around it. So it kind of leads to helping returning release team folks if they want to come back. Makes that process easier.
Do folks normally interpret that as like from the previous release team? So if it's 126, are the two returning from 125? Or does that, when they're considering that, do you think people, like if somebody from 123 applied and they had been gone for a while, do you think that they would be considered at the same?
I think that really depends. I know Leo's got his hand up, sorry, but I think it depends. Like, for example, I did a lot of roles in the release team. But if you brought me back right now and said, hey, James, can you be an enhancement shadow? I'd be like, everything's changed. I don't know. Because it's all different now. But in a different role that hasn't changed so much, maybe. You know, I think it does depend. Sorry, Leo, yeah.
So right now, a returner is just someone who's been previously in the release team. So it doesn't really matter which cycle, just like any previous cycle. But maybe what we could think about is that like the teams are very different from like how much effort you have to put in, but also how complicated it can be. I think so. Maybe it would be good maybe to have 4 enhancements or some other teams, maybe a bit more returners, and for other teams a bit newcomers, so we can also balance this so that you basically just not always go from shadow to lead, but also switch teams. So you have like a better overview over the entire system and roles. So maybe this is something that we can follow. Also, I think, but this is like something more for the retro, that some teams, maybe we can reshape them a little bit, because I think, I don't know, there's like a bug triage, maybe there's like some similarities with CI signal or something like this. Maybe there's like, maybe it would be worth the effort to brainstorm about the teams a little bit. Yeah, or maybe there's like some parts which we can, how we can support enhancements or some. Right now it feels kind of unbalanced a little bit, but maybe this is like a discussion for a different cap or for the retro. I can also write this as a comment in the cap. Maybe.
No, I think. Okay, I think I have a way forward for now, which is to redraft this cap to more focus on that. I guess returning contributor path and fleshing that out a bit more, and go from there. Yeah.
All right. So it sounds like we can box this one up for now. If you have more comments or you'd like to discuss this more, I think the cap is probably, or the issue that James has open is linked in the agenda is probably a great place to do that. All right. Next on our list was the survey that I sent out. So if you didn't see, if you're going to KubeCon, the Contributor Summit schedule was announced, and we got Monday. I think Sasha is going to not be able to make that. So we're going to see if we can also get a Tuesday room just to have more continued discussion if that's available. We also wanted to have just like a social hangout, low pressure. And that's what this survey is for. Tuesday and Wednesday are the two options that we kind of identified. I think I looked at the survey results and I think Wednesday was winning. I think also there's a few folks here that can't make it on Tuesday. So maybe we're leaning towards Wednesday for that. If you are interested in going, take a look at the survey and let us know your preferences, and we'll take that into consideration as we're scheduling things. We also, if you look at the top of this document, we dropped in a placeholder for KubeCon Contributor Summit special. If there are any topics you'd like to discuss at KubeCon, you'd want to have in person, maybe like do some whiteboarding or anything, just have it like in person, face-to-face kind of collaborations, drop them into the agenda for that. So it's, again, it's at the top of this document, and then we can use that to help kind of plan and shape things for that session. And that was it for me. I think that takes us through the rest of the agenda items. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to discuss or bring up? Got a little bit of time left before we need to roll off, but if that's it, then we can call it a day a little bit early and let people have some time back. Going back to the package publishing topic, I'm going to start a thread in SIG Release and try to get Ben to give us like more direct answers or feedback on the urgency of things, so we can just kind of use that to prioritize like whether we need to do something in parallel to the OBS efforts to alleviate concerns on their side. So keep an eye on that.
I mean, independently of what they say, I know that team is already thinning down, I think, and then but it's a priority for us just to get rid of that dependency. And so now that we're working on it, well, it maybe should, I mean, independently of what they say, I think we should do it. So.
Yeah, definitely we should be doing it. I think we just need to know, like, can we wait for the OBS solution to be done, or do we need to do something in the interim as well?
Okay, yeah, I don't think we have much of a choice, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Sounds like that's a wrap. Arno, you still generate a GPG key?
Why people working on OBS stuff? I think we can look at signature and see if we can have our own GPG keys for everything in the future. That's like something we can take a look at, how we want to be able using Kernel, trying to sign the system packages we're going to build, regardless of the build system we choose.
Well, I mean, just building the key management tooling and everything around the GPG keys is a project by itself. So
yeah, for sure.
I don't think we have enough people. I mean, we're already have a huge backlog of things to, and not to afford the luxury of running into projects at the same time. So if we're going on the OBS thing and we can try and fail quickly, that would be the best thing. Or try and succeed quickly, that would be the best thing, so that we can, because if we decide that it's not a path to where we should go, we should like quickly shift resources and start building our own signing and infra around the key.
One of the things that we have to consider too is that it's already going to be a huge lift on the user side with us switching up the GPG key for anybody who's currently using the existing repositories.
Mhm.
So if we can make it just one switch instead of potentially two switches, that's better for folks than, if we, try to rush something in place in the interim and then decide to go a different direction.
All right. With that, I will say that we are done for today. Hope everybody has a great rest of your Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on where you are, and have a great week.